Everybody, welcome back to the Insider's Lounge. Normally, I don't ask how you're doing, so I thought, Rachel, I'll ask you first, how are you doing? And then feel free to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Chad. Yeah, no, I'm doing well. Yeah, we had a game last night and lost, so could be better, but overall, still doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
Everything's great. I've never been asked that either, so this feels good. This is a proper start to a conversation.
Amazing.
But
Good.
to get things started here, let's begin with your earliest soccer memories. What were they growing up, either playing or watching? What was it that first initiated your soccer passion?
Yeah, great question. So I have always been surrounded by the game of soccer. My family loves the game and plays the game, and so when I was a kid, I remember going to my dad's games that he was coaching and just hanging out, kicking the ball around with my brother and friends. And it was just always a super fun time. And then, yeah, growing up, started playing myself. I was shy as a kid, so my parents will tell the story that I didn't really enjoy my first few teams. I kind of shied away from it. But all my memories are good memories of just loving playing soccer with my friends and with my family and everything like that.
And then working our way up, one of the first questions I always like to ask is about the educational side and sort of your growing up in that side of things. So you have, I want to make sure I get this right, a bachelor's degree in statistics and leadership with a psychology minor. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, perfect.
Correct.
So that normally there's a little bit of a mix where you might not necessarily see the correlation between someone's degree and what they're doing now, but I think that's quite clear where there's a little bit more of a sensual display on what you're actually doing now compared to what you did in university. So can you get into sort of the educational time in university, how that was, and then how it relates to what you're working on now?
Yeah, no, 100%. And even like my story with that kind of starts beforehand, before I actually got to school, because when I was graduating from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I said, I grew up playing, so always like loved soccer, but hadn't really thought about pursuing a career in it per se. And so I actually took a gap year before I went to college. And so during that time, um, well, yeah, in high school, in my senior year is kind of like I could go and do something and not really have an idea about it. And just kind of, I felt like I was, just there's this conventional pathway that I was just kind of being dragged along. And I kind of wanted to stop and think about what I actually wanted to do with my life. And so took the time off to figure out what I wanted to do career wise, but also to just like figure out more about who I was as a person and everything like that. And so during my gap year, the first thing I did was go to Costa Rica and work with a group. It's called Woza Soccer. They fell apart, unfortunately, due to COVID. But they sponsored like these service and soccer trips to work with kids in poor and disadvantaged communities. And so I was able to go for a few weeks and just kind of be immersed in a football environment and help coach these kids and just experience soccer culture around the world, and really kind of fell in love with that concept of the role that soccer plays in much more of a global scale than just my the environment that I grew up in. And then after, so the idea of maybe me working in soccer is kind of hinted there. And then after that, I took a couple months to do some traveling around the United States. I'm originally from upstate New York, and so I then went out west and visited a few different states, a few different places, and in each of those places I went, I reached out to just soccer people in the area. So whether it was college coaches, whether it was the marketing department of a professional team, whoever I could kind of reach out to kind of see what do people that work in soccer actually do. And so I was kind of starting to narrow down this idea of what could a career in soccer and something that I love look like for me. And so did a few months of traveling and kind of heard of this concept of a soccer analyst. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And so the end of my gap year was kind of finished up by me interning with a Division I men's team near where I grew up as an analyst for them. And they never really had someone doing that role. And I didn't know what I was doing. So it was a great just like learning environment to kind of get started. And then I went to college. So now really getting into your question here. I went to a very small liberal arts school in New Jersey that's called Drew University. And I chose to go to Drew for a couple of reasons. One was the location around New York City. Two being that I could play soccer there. And three being that it was a liberal arts school. And so I knew, like I said, I kind of had this idea of going into soccer, but didn't know what that looked like per se, and wanted to still have, the breadth of my education. And so took some classes, was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and then realized that there was a space within the university to design my own major. And so that's what I ultimately ended up doing, which is what you mentioned with statistics and leadership. And so it was a bunch of psychology classes, hence the minor, as well as just like communication-based ones. And yes, the data and the math and all of that related to statistics. But it was really important to me to have kind of the leadership aspect in my classes as well, because first of all, I knew that I had a big interest in working in men's soccer. And so I wanted to kind of, as a female, have those leadership skills and qualities, but also I knew that that could just apply to everything I was going to do in life. And so, yeah, went down the pathway of looking through the course catalog and choosing what courses made the most sense to me based on wanting to be an analyst or a coach. And yeah, made my own major based off all of that. And it is definitely coming into play with what I do in the day-to-day now. So it worked out well for me.
So it seems I was doing some research when I was busy getting the questions sorted out. And from our previous conversation, you could see that everything you did, whether it was your internships, your coaching licenses, all these sort of little steps that were stepping stones towards what you're doing now. And although at the time it might not have seemed intentional, but from the outside of view or the overview, you can see that it was very intentional to the career that you're in now. So can we get a little bit of a description behind some of the decisions made to do some of those internships, the coaching licenses, things like that leading up to now?
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's funny, like you say, like, it seems like it was so intentional, but in the moment it was crazy because I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing, but now it's looking back, it all seems like it made sense. But in the moment, it's definitely like you just kind of are taking the chances and not really knowing if it is going to work out. So I'm grateful that it kind of has for me. But ultimately, it all started, like I said, kind of during that gap year when I was working with a Division I men's team. And it was, like I said, kind of being there and not kind of figuring out like, what does an analyst do? What is important to a coaching staff? What is it like to be in season and working and stuff like that as well. And so there's a lot of just trial and error to kind of figure out like, what does this job look like as an analyst? And then once I got to school, it made a lot of sense for me to just kind of work with the teams in my environment. So it was cool. I actually ended up making a good connection with the men's lacrosse team at my school. And I don't know a lot about lacrosse. And so it was kind of like, it really came down to communication. Like, what does he want and what can I help give as an analyst? And when I say analyst, like, yes, that can be incredibly broad. And I think that what that ultimately comes down to is what the team, what the coach, what the club wants and needs. And so with the men's lacrosse team at school, it was a lot of looking at like their shots, like where are they getting shots from? What is it leading to? When is it happening? What players are involved? And so it's funny when I think back to that experience, and also when I was working during my gap year, like it was pen and paper, just like writing down stats, which is just so funny compared to like what I do now. But like that works. And like I always tell people, like with youth teams or when they're just starting out, like it can be that simple. But data is information and it can help you. And so like something as simple as that makes a difference. And so, yeah, doing that with those teams. But then that grew into working with the basketball programs at my school and also the soccer programs, of course, in a really cool kind of way that then I was teaching other students how to do analytics with those teams as well. And, that's, people always say one of the biggest things is to get better yourself is to teach it to others. So while I was still growing as myself as an analyst, being able to kind of teach that to others and have them do it too, I learned even more, which was a really great experience. But then, yeah, off of that, one of the biggest things for me is like, I love education. I love learning. And I think that like in the classroom, that's so important, but also like you need to be hands-on and have internships and like fail while you're learning, make mistakes, just go out there and do things. So I did a lot of internships when I was at school, like you're mentioning as well. And one of the early ones that I did was working with the Greenville Triumph and Greenville Liberty. The Triumph is in USL League One, and then the Liberty is the women's team there. And this was different for me because it was outside of a college environment. And so what does a professional team look like? How does it kind of run when this is like everybody's day job? They're getting paid to play kind of a thing. And that for me, again, a lot of trial and error because kind of the lower level teams here in the United States like don't necessarily have the resources to have an analyst. So I would come in as kind of an intern, an unpaid position, and just kind of see again like directly off the coaching staff, but what can I do to help? And yeah, so those were really cool experiences with the teams in Greenville, just to see how, again, like in that professional environment, when winning matters immensely, the role that an analyst can have in providing insights and working with video and just kind of taking the teams to like the next levels. And again, it can be something simple, such as like showing video right after training. We started to do that there, and like then the conversations continue from on the field to off the field, and just stuff like that was really cool for me to see. And then yeah, moving forward, as soon as I graduated from college, I got an internship with Austin FC and Austin FC2, the MLS and MLS Next Pro clubs in Austin, Texas. And this was a really great opportunity for me as well. I actually was able to get to this opportunity through a really awesome group that's called Women in Sports Tech, and they fund summer internships. And so I was with an internship through them, funded as a fellow for 2 months, and then it ended up being a great experience there that I was able to extend that internship and be in Austin for a total of 6 months. And again, just excelled a little bit more in terms of the intensity and how everything was like there. But yeah, it's really important, I think, to be in those spaces. And like I said, just kind of either you're going to learn something or you're going to succeed, and you rarely succeed. You're mostly just learning. And so again, yeah, really important to just kind of go out there and try things and do things, I think. And then, yeah, like you said as well, I have kind of two paralleling careers, I guess, of being an analyst and a coach, because they're very kind of similar ultimately. And I don't know, I think that I might want to go into coaching in the future, but I absolutely love what I'm doing as an analyst now. And so it's been important for me to continue to get my licenses. I started when I was like in my gap year, I think, getting my first license, and I just got my my US soccer C license in January. And so that is valuable for me just for the sake of learning the game. I'm obsessed with knowing as much as I can about the game of soccer, and coaching is a great way to do that. And especially a coach and an analyst in a professional environment work hand in hand. So being able to see the way that they interpret the game and how a coach thinks about soccer is important as an analyst. And also, like I said, if I eventually want to go down that pathway, having my licenses just helps me out.
You mentioned the importance of like a hands-on approach, like the internships, working in the day-to-day environment of those, whether it's clubs, the university side too, but also the educational side where you're getting your licenses, you're going to school, getting a degree. Yeah. Do you think there's a good balance between like the hands? Because I know many different people have different learning styles and how they learn best. So it seems you have a good like hybrid approach where you like the hands-on, but you also like the educational side and actually learning. Right. So do you think there's a good balance and an importance for balancing that, the two learning styles?
Yes, 100%. I mean, personally, of course, I think you need both. I think if you were just, in a classroom only doing like that side of it versus and like the classroom and just your licenses and everything, like you can only learn so much. There has to be a space for you to also apply that. But likewise, if you're only out there trying things, it never forces you to stop and think about what it is you're actually doing. One of the things that I loved about doing my C license was how much it made me actually stop and think about what I was doing as a coach. And so I had a U10 girls team that I was coaching, and I laughed just because it was fun. And it was a big challenge, especially to just ironically, just a side note of it all is like I would be with Austin FC in the morning and these professional male athletes. And then afterwards I'd be going and just like trying to teach 10-year-olds how to kick a soccer ball. Like the range was crazy, but it was just so cool because it's all the same game and you can learn from both. So like you're saying, like one thing applies to another, but also like I was taking my C license at that time. So I was forced to think about why am I having them do this exercise during training, and how am I reflecting as a coach? Like, what words am I using? So like that side of it, of being able to take what you can from quote classroom environment, a license, whatever it may be, to what you're actually doing and having to learn and be there. I think that yes, you need both sides of it, and that can be what really excels you.
Before we get into your current day-to-day, I'm curious, with coaches in the past that we've had on the podcast, a lot of them have experience in sort of different levels where they coach in youth, they coach women's, and they coach men's
Yeah.
professional, they sort of are collegiate, and they have a mix and a good understanding of the different levels. You
Yeah.
not only have that, but you also have now the analysis side of different sports. So lacrosse,
Yeah.
basketball, soccer, and
Yes.
you have a full on mix of not only the sports, but the different levels of it as well. How do you see that sort of giving you an advantage, or when you're doing your analysis work today? Do you get benefits from when you were doing the analysis side on the basketball front or lacrosse or even the youth levels of soccer?
Yes, totally. Like I think that by like narrowing yourself and only doing one thing, you can only get so good at that one thing. But having these other ideas that you can apply to what you actually are doing can just make you that much better. Like I'll say it again and again of like one of the biggest things I think as an analyst that's important is your communication skills. It doesn't matter what sport, it doesn't matter what level, like communication is communication and dealing with different types of people. And so I think that that element definitely applied from the other sports I was working in and the different levels of just like, again, back to the, working in a pro men's environment, then an hour later being with 10-year-old girls. Like sometimes being with the 10-year-old girls, you realize how simple it is. And that can be applied to a professional men's soccer environment. Like there's things that you can take. And I think that like just for me personally, being able to have that broadened perspective on what I do by doing an ample things, like it has just helped benefit me immensely. Yeah.
So let's get into Bay FC now. So you've been there just a short, I think it's a short few months, right? Not even a full year.
Yep.
And can we get into what your role actually looks like, your day to day? And I'm curious. I think a lot of people find it fascinating, like how you even found the role. Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them, and how that sort of early process worked?
Yeah. No. 100%. I think that it was kind of interesting because I'm a huge advocate for like your network in sports and anything. I think that always comes through. However, this job I applied for online. I didn't know anyone at the club, and I got it. And so that also happens. And so yeah, I finished up. Like I said, I was interning with Austin FC, so finished up with them around November, and then of 2023, and then was looking for jobs. So like I said, reaching out to that network, trying to find what was around, but needed a job. And so I ended up applying, saw the Bay FC opportunity pop up, and it sounded like a perfect fit for what I wanted to do and where I was at in my career. And so applied for the job online, and then it's kind of like a limbo period of like, here it goes into the nothingness. Let's see what happens. But I did try and kind of reach out to people on LinkedIn from the club to see if I could maybe, find my way in a little bit. But then ultimately, it just ended up being my application that I sent in that I heard back from, and had to do a series of a couple interviews with different people in the organization. Had to do a little project for them to see kind of my work and what I was capable of. And then ultimately, I got the call that I got the position, and that's something that you cannot say no to. And so, yeah, then I've been here since February, and it's May now, so it's been a short few months, but packed of good stuff.
I'm curious. When I was writing up the questions, I was thinking like, not only were you quite new to the position, but so was the team and as a whole. Like the entire organization was just brand new
Yeah.
right off the ground. So what
Yes.
has that experience been like, where there's no real like past history of comparing, okay, this was last year's result, this is how we can bounce back, or this is how we can improve? Like give me some of the sort of the mindset now and how you start fresh, completely new.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a rare experience. I don't know if I'll ever have this chance to work for a brand new club again. But it's one of the coolest things ever, honestly. It is so fun to basically, and this is, something that they told me when I was applying for the position and ultimately accepting it as well, is like that there's going to be a lot of stuff we have to figure out. And especially like year one, it's just problem solving a lot of stuff. But to have that role in kind of deciding the way that the club runs, whether that's, my day-to-day tasks as an analyst, but also like the culture and what we accept and what we're all about. Like being able to help write that in history is a really unique space to be in as well.
So getting into the actual role side of things, I'm curious. I think a lot of people hear, oh, they have an analysis department at a club, or this person's an analyst, but they don't actually have the full understanding of what they do. So can we get a better understanding of your actual responsibility? Like if we sort of summarize a week in Rachel's life, what does it look like at the moment with BayFC?
Yeah. It involves watching a lot of soccer, that is for sure, which I love. I think that you're spot on with the idea that like people hear this concept of a soccer analyst, but what does that really mean? And like I kind of alluded to before, I think that it really depends on the club and it depends on the coaching staff for what the exact roles of an analyst look like. But with BayFC, so my title is data/video analyst. And so I work on both clearly the data side of things and the video side of things. We at Bay, which is one of the other reasons I love the club, is we have a department of analysts. There's 3 of us, which is incredibly rare for, the NWSL and just kind of soccer in the US as a whole to have multiple analysts. And so it's fantastic because I think that if there's just one analyst at a club, it can kind of be like stuck, but it's so great to be able to just talk with multiple people on all the stuff that we do on the day to day. And so let's kind of paint the framework a little bit more. So we have, my boss is our data analyst. Her name is Ariel Dror, and she is a genius. She just knows data and soccer at the extreme level. So it's really cool to kind of work with her on these projects that I'll get into in the day-to-day stuff. And then on the video side, we have our performance analyst, AJ Barnold, and he knows the game so well. It's so awesome to just learn from him. And then my role exists between the two of them. So it's helping with the data projects, but then also supporting the video and also being the person that combines the two of them and making sure that everything that we're seeing on those two sides of gathering information aligns, I guess. That's kind of my role as a general description. But then the day-to-day, so let's see. So we start off a day when we have training. A typical day, we have meetings in the morning, some kind of with the staff, just kind of going over some things. We work very closely with the coaches. So whenever they need things, we're finishing stuff up, communicating with them, making sure that we're all on the same page with all sorts of stuff, whether it's pre-match, post-match, training, all that stuff. And then the first thing we do in the morning is we have meetings. And so, or a team meeting with the players. And so that will be based on kind of where in the week it lies. So it could be a pre-match meeting for an upcoming opponent, talking about what to expect in and out of possession or set pieces, etc. It could also be kind of a video based on here's ourselves and here's how we're playing. So that might be more of a post-match, like this is what we were trying to do in the game. This is how you guys did great. This is where we're still looking to improve. So very video heavy, and I'm helping kind of with some of the video for that, especially AJ. He puts a lot of that together, and I'm supporting him. And then, after we have the team meeting with the players, we have more meetings, just talking about stuff. It's kind of our time to get some things done that we need to before heading out to training. And then at training, we obviously have to record it as video analysts. And so we have a couple of drones that we use to film training. And so it's important, like we can get that tactical view at the angle the coaches want that make the most sense to them, etc. So we're filming training and we live code it, which basically means we use a program called Huddle Sports Code. And that goes through to the drone and connects, so we can, as we're filming, we're able to put these tags on it that say what's going on. So whether that's, we're doing an exercise and it starts and it begins, you just kind of click it and that's called coding. But also in the flow of a game, you can click specific actions. So like an attacking phase versus a defending phase, etc. And ultimately the purpose behind that is that post-training, we give that to the coaches and they can easily go through and be like, I want to watch this specific, segment of training, and they can easily find it and go through it. Which is just fantastic our job is to make the lives of coaches easier. And so being able to easily give that to them. And then we have in the afternoon some unit or individual player meetings that we will help out with or be a part of or just listen in on. But then it's a lot of just helping with working on pre-match or post-match reports. And so I help with a lot of pre-match analysis. So that's preparing for an upcoming opponent. So I'll watch, like I said, watching lots of soccer. I'll watch some games for our upcoming opponent. So like this week, we play Orlando this next weekend. And so watching their games, have been doing all of that. I help also compile those videos to give to the coaches. And then I do a pre-match analysis. And so based on the video that I watch, but then applying that data. So that's where kind of the combination of the two comes in. And so Ariel and I work on making a bunch of plots, a lot of, the data stats based information that we can give them about the opponent. And again, I see my job is to watch the video and see what does the data say. So if we see where an opponent is attacking or what their kind of trends are with attacking, I'm looking at the video to see what that data and what that information means. So like numbers are just numbers. You have to kind of link it to something. And that's kind of the role that I play in all of that. And then I have a role with the club helping with set pieces as well. And so I'll work with our goalkeeper coach to kind of plan for defending and attacking set pieces, which is a lot of fun. I love that part of it. And then that's kind of an overview of the weeks when we have training and everything. And then game day itself, best day of the week. It's actually pretty chill in the morning because we typically have games in the evening. And so we head to the stadium a few hours before the game if it's a home game and help get everything set up. We film so we can, again, do that live coding like I mentioned. So then after the game, we can give the game to the coaches right away with it fully coded so that they can watch it and break it down. So we're filming from kind of up above, obviously, so we can get that tactical view. And we are in communication with the bench, telling them things that we see. If they have questions, we can help answer them. Our job, again, is to give the coaches a different perspective because clearly from down on the touchline, it's kind of hard to see what's going on. I'm sure that people have seen, the iPad that coaches have on the bench. So that's us. We're giving that information to them for them to then give to the players in hopes that we get the 3 points at the end of the day. And then, we do the post-match report after that, which again, putting that data in, specific objectives for that game, what we're trying to achieve. Did we meet our goals? Helping put video together for players. And then we just do it all over again.
Hey there. If you're listening to this, you're about halfway through this week's episode. So I want to say thank you. I'm just here to quickly remind you that these episodes are free. They're free to watch, free to listen to, and all I ask in return is for you to follow, maybe like, share, comment, or even leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting platform. That's enough from me, though. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode, and I'll see you in the next one. No, that's great. That was one of the best summaries I've heard of the weekly sort of routine of what's happening. With this new role, have you found have you had any lessons or surprises or even challenges that were different to anything you've done before in different roles?
Yeah, no, I think that the biggest thing with this role specifically has been the challenge of it being a new club itself, kind of like we were speaking about before. But I think that when you come to into a club that's already established, they have their way of doing things, and you in that new role are learning how the club works. This time it's very different because nobody has the answers to some things, or like things are just being figured out as we go, and that it's so hard because there's no answers. I don't know any other way to say it besides we have to figure out a lot of stuff ourselves. But also it's so cool to be a part of that I absolutely love it, even though it presents difficulties. That it's in and of itself of just having to learn as we go, and all the communication involved, and knowing that it's going to be a process. That's the biggest challenge as well, of just some things we're working on, and I'm laughing because it's oh, well, don't we have the answer to that? No, we didn't think that we were going to face that, or we didn't know that was going to happen yet. That's the biggest challenge, I think, in this, with this new club. Yeah.
I think it's most comparable almost to a startup where it's this is an HR problem. Oh, wait, we don't have an HR department. We need an HR department first to solve this. No, it's that sort of similar sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, I don't know if I'll ever have the opportunity to work with a club that's brand new, and it's such a unique experience. But that's the great part of it as well, is being able to take what I've seen from other environments and collaborate that with people that are coming from their own special backgrounds and environments, and hoping to kind of create something together. And we all have these ideas. We're all so on the same page of just like what we want the club to be and where we hope to get to. It's just a matter of doing the work to get there. So I'm really excited again, just for like to see it down the line, how it all is going to progress, because we're writing the beginning of the history of the club. So yeah, just bought in on the idea of what we can be in the future.
You mentioned earlier the importance of communication in the analysis side of soccer. I'm curious, I wanted to dive in a little bit more into that. So what does that actually look like? Like, are you having 1v1 meetings with players, reading out, like looking at what they did in the last game, how they can improve, that sort of thing? And what are some of your key tactics or way you do things in order to keep that communication as high as possible and really keep that understanding across the club structure?
Yeah. No, I'm glad that it's clear that I value communication, because I really do. I think that it depends, on the club. Like specifically when I was with the MLS Next Pro team in Austin, those are, it's a developmental league. And so there's a lot of kind of focus on the individual player and what he can do to get better. And so there's a lot that I would do to kind of help get video for the coaching staff to then meet with those individual players. I think that right now there's many ways to kind of go about answering your question, because there's so many people that you do need to communicate with as an analyst. It depends, like I said, on the club, about how much communication actually happens between myself and players. A lot of it is like, if they would want something, we're kind of the people to give it to them. But a lot of that communication of my job is with the coaches. And I think that I don't think that it's possible to over communicate. And when I say communicate, what I mean by that can be a volume of different things. For me, it comes with just like listening in the first place, like being in the room or being in the room next to the coaches is kind of the way that it's set up, so that you can answer their questions before they even ask you. Just knowing the process, knowing the way that they come to you for information, just trying to always be one step ahead. Like I said, the job of an analyst is to make a coach's job that much easier. And so like listening to what they're talking about, listening to what they might be asking for, that's part of it. But also when they do ask you something, making sure you understand what they're asking. And so it's like, never would I just like a coach ask for something and I'm just going to maybe know what they want. It's more in depth than that. And like the other thing as an analyst, especially with that data side of it, is like coaches, this is a huge generalization, but like coaches don't see the game through data. They see it through video. So like when we're bringing data in, sometimes coaches, they want to know ultimately, how can we win the game and how can we not concede goals? That is so broad in terms of the data or the video that you could bring in. And so how my job is to listen to what they ultimately are asking for, but then breaking that down into something tangible to give them, to help them. That's the job pretty much, is that simplifying of things. But then also, yeah, like you have to ask questions. That's another part of the communication for me, especially, being pretty young going into this. Like there's a lot that I don't know. And like but I know that I don't know, and I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know. So if a coach asks for something and I don't understand what that means, I'm going to tell them that I don't understand what that means. And then that's going to help me do a better job of getting them the information that they want. But yeah, you gotta talk to people. You gotta be able to admit that you don't know, and you gotta just have that constant conversation going in order to ultimately do the job.
The world of analysis is so new. I think even when you were saying with the first opportunity you had in your gap year, it was sort of one of those things where neither party knew what they wanted or what they were getting involved in, but it was just the start of something. And I think it's been around a little bit more in basketball, baseball, some of the more American sports. You saw it a little bit before it was in soccer and in the world of football as a whole.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future of this going now? So now it's sort of been adapted where there is analysts, maybe not as many as people would expect or want, but where do you see things going now from here? Where do you see the role of an analyst evolving to?
Yeah, I think that, as technology continues to increase, I think that you'll just see more and more of that coming into play, whether it's, kind of AI based, of just thinking of possibilities that we couldn't think of and analyzing that, or, adding that in and just, yeah, taking the game itself to the next level. But also on, more the person to person basis, I think that you'll start to have analysts that are analysts slash coaches, that kind of a joint role, perhaps, of like nowadays we have set piece coaches. Like that's a new concept. I think that you'll start to have people that will excel at knowing certain aspects of the game and being able to therefore analyze and share information about that piece of the game. And I see, coaching staffs growing into helping coaching and analyst roles, being more specific to just certain elements of the game itself, for sure.
I think you hinted at it there a little bit. We've sort of seen this idea or this trend where there's a lot of analysts that either want to become coaches or are becoming coaches, and it's becoming more of a blend of, okay, what's the difference between a coach and an analyst? A lot of coaches are still on the sidelines with the iPad doing analysis work, so you're sort of seeing that blend more and more. Do you see, I know you hinted at the fact that you might be interested in coaching in the future. Is that a reality? And do you see your role in analysis helping that and being an advantage in sort of that transition?
Yeah, 100%. I believe that an analyst is going to help me become a coach if that's what I choose to do. I absolutely love being an analyst right now, and so I see myself, staying in this line of work, and doing analytics because I just love it. But yeah, no, I think that coaching is more like both a coach and an analyst need to know the game very well. I think that an analyst, like their tactical knowledge and a coach's tactical knowledge, both need to be extremely high. However, the coaching piece and the difference maker I see is that a coach is also managing people. An analyst needs to know the game. They need to know the soccer, and so does a coach, but a coach is in charge of like so many other things. And so when I'm ready for that, that's kind of when I would think about pursuing coaching. But coaching is also not easy. Neither is being an analyst, but I think that with each role that I've had, I've been able to learn more about what coaching looks like at the high level. If I were to coach, like I would love to be in a high level environment, but also like the work-life balance and the other intensities that come with coaching at a high level. I'm not sure if that will match with my lifestyle in the future. But yeah, I'm here for the long ride to see what happens and just kind of enjoying what I'm always doing. It's what's most important to me. Yeah.
We have a newer question that I've been asking the guests, and I want to know your most valuable asset, or what you think your most valuable asset is. So that can be a mindset, a different way you do things compared to others. Just to give me what you think your most valuable asset is.
Yeah, I have two. I think that, well, maybe I have two. I don't know. But my two, I think, would be like, I just pay attention. I think that that's something that's overlooked. Ironic that I use that phrasing, but like, I think that paying attention to what's going on, I don't think that enough people do that, or enough people don't do that well enough. And whether that is paying attention to the game itself as an analyst, but also paying attention to people, like I said, being able to, that communication aspect of knowing the people and knowing what a coach needs and wants and how they accept that information, but also being able to read the room, and just that side of it of awareness, I think, is something that stands out in me personally. And then also, like, you got to work hard. Like we've kind of talked about, obviously, my pathway into all of this and how seems like it's made so much sense, but like it's not easy. And, there's challenges that come up along the way that, you don't expect, or make it that much difficult just when you think you got it all figured out. And so it's the matter of having to push through that. And ultimately for me, I know where I want to get to and know that I love what I do. So it's all worth it, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So it's the hard work as well.
You mentioned the challenges along the way, and I'm curious. We always say that in order to do anything or to move forward in life, sort of those stepping stones we were speaking about earlier, there has to be
Yeah.
challenges. That's just
Yeah.
the reality of life. So what is a big challenge? This can be something that's happened in your personal life or even in your career, a big challenge that you faced that you now can look back at and almost use as motivation to keep you going and keep you moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a lot of challenges. I think that some of the ones that stand out the most is like is apart from like the work itself of having to, well, let's see, I'll give you a couple. The first one is like being able to understand the game at a high level. I pursued working as an analyst because as a kid I seemed to like when I was playing I knew more than other people. And that's when I kind of realized that, like, yes, I love soccer. Yes, it was always fun. But then I'd be out there. I played as a six. So, like, I'd be like, kind of orchestrating things. And people didn't see it the way that I saw it. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's so simple, but it wasn't to other people. And so that's when I kind of got this idea that, oh, like, this soccer is different. My interpretation of the game is different than other people's. And so when I ultimately made that decision to pursue being an analyst, I I I did that because I thought I knew the game. And then as soon as I started working in soccer environments at a high level, I realized I knew nothing about soccer. And so the biggest challenge, like one of them is just like being able to understand the game at an extremely high level. That is something that doesn't come easy, and it takes a lot of work to see things. And there's always like, as soon as you think you're starting to get it, there's another element that's being applied, whether it's, thinking about the spacing, thinking about the relationships between players, all this stuff. It's just there's always more, which for me is exciting, but it's also the challenge. Another challenge I faced is apart from the game itself and what's going on the field is each place that I've gone. So like I said, I'm originally from upstate New York. I was in South Carolina. I was in Texas. Now I'm in California, and haven't known people in these places. And like as soon as you leave the office, like I'm like, all right, what do I do? Like, how do I survive on my own? And my family is extremely supportive, and I've been able to meet people that have helped me. But like that side of it is also the challenge of just navigating that. I've had to do unpaid internships and just trying to kind of live life in joint with being an analyst has kind of been something that I've had to overcome. But I also think that if I hadn't, had the guts to go to Costa Rica during my gap year, if I hadn't gone to South Carolina for a couple months, if I hadn't gone to Austin, I wouldn't be working for Bay FC now and have, the courage to do that. A third challenge, if we're just going to keep rolling with them, is honestly like I said, right now I'm working in the NWSL, which is professional women's soccer, but I've also worked in men's soccer. And being a female working in the men's game comes with challenges. The biggest one being that people, this is very broad kind of statement and doesn't apply to all the people that I've worked with certainly, but it's rare to see a female working in men's soccer, and so it has become the norm for me to be the only female out in the field. And no offense, but like when I am out there, people assume I'm an athletic trainer or I'm on that side of like the medical side. And like I'm saying, no offense to female or any females who are working in the medical side or anything like that, but to be a coach and as a female in the men's game or to be an analyst, that just doesn't happen. And so for me, one of the biggest challenges has just been kind of, how do I phrase this? Like how do I phrase this?
Almost like making your own path. Like you're sort of set,
Yeah.
almost like what you were saying with at BFC now, where it's that startup stage and you're sort of
Yeah.
building everything as a club all together on your own, where you guys sort of feel like you're on your own island and the rest of the league who's been working for years is there.
Yeah.
I think it's almost the same sort of setting where you're building your own path where no one's sort of done it before, especially when you look in the analysis side and coaching, that hasn't been there in existence in the past. So I think you almost have to have a different mindset or a different understanding on like, look, I'm doing this on my own, by myself on the West Coast, families on the East Coast. Like that, there's a lot of challenges that go with that.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And that's exactly what it is. It's just that matter of like, when you don't know what you're doing, what do? You have to go figure it out, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And related to all of that as well is like being one of the few females working in men's sports or in men's soccer is that there's kind of this hidden like idea to not mess up because there's more people are going to remember you because there's less females. So when you do something, you have to do it right. You can't say the wrong things. You need to always know your stuff. And so that kind of pressure that comes with that, like I enjoy that without a doubt. But also there's always that conversation in your head of like an awareness of what you're going to say, how people are going to read you being there, and that you need to just be good at what you do. So that's a challenge, I would say.
No, those are great. It gives you a good understanding of sort of the day to day and what you're facing.
Yeah.
The next one here, imagine you're on a video call like we are now, but with someone or we can even take you, call it 5 to 10 years ago, where you're just breaking into things. You're not really sure what you want to do, but you want to be an analyst. Can you give some advice to someone that is looking, maybe aspiring to be an analyst or somewhere in that space and just needs some words or some words of advice to kind of push them forward and keep them going?
Yeah. No, I think the simplest thing for someone who wants to be an analyst or a coach is watch soccer. Like, I think that you can learn so much by just what is right in front of you, but also watch soccer and then talk about it with people, because like we were saying before, like the different sports that can be applied, the different levels like that you can work in, outside information and outside ideas help influence what's going on inside your head. So like you can watch a lot of soccer and think you have all the answers, but you probably don't. You need to have these ideas, your ideas be influenced by others. So watch soccer and then talk about it. And then also reach out to other people, and just in terms of networking and that kind of thing. I think that one of the things that I did that I really think helped me is that I've emailed so many people. I've tried to get phone calls. I've tried to get Zoom calls, and just to talk with people to ask them about their experiences, because everyone has different ones, and there's no correct pathway into this. There's a multitude of different ways that you can get to where you want to get to. So it's a matter of having those conversations and never knowing what ideas from others can spark you and what you end up doing. Those are the biggest things. And just my other advice is kind of, as I've been mentioning as well, is like, you got to work hard for it as well, that it's not going to come easy. So you got to work hard.
We spoke about if you had that conversation with yourself 5-10 years ago, but if we look in the future now, call it 10 years in the future, where do you think you'd be in terms of your personal life, your career? And give me some points on that to see.
Yeah.
Do you have a future sort of? I know some people think in the future and sort of have plans or goals, but others sort of just like to think presently, and some have a mix in between. So what's your sort of thought patterns on that?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting to hear how people think about it, because I think that for me personally, if you had asked me, a year ago, I would have said that I have a lot of big goals for the future, and I think that I still do. However, I currently love what I'm doing right now. So a lot of what I'm doing now is focused on the present and just getting better every single day. And it's also just crazy to me, because if you had asked me a year ago, I was still in college. And so it's crazy to think about in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years, what I might be doing. I have absolutely no idea. I am pretty confident that it's still going to be in soccer. Another challenge, if we want to go back to that, is like, for me, is always like, I've never want to fall out of love with soccer. And so I always want to have a good relationship with it. And so I hope that in 10 years, I will have done a good job to still love this game and not get burnt out by this game. I'm confident that I can do that. However, ultimately in 10 years, I want to just be doing things that make me happy, whether that's related to being an analyst or a coach, or, coaching my kids, or whatever it might be that, I'll have in the future. Like, whatever that looks like, I just want to ultimately be happy in what I'm doing.
So we'll wrap things up with some quick fire questions here. First off, your favorite club growing up, who did you support?
I'm an Arsenal fan.
Arsenal, right? We've had quite a few Arsenal fans on the podcast. I don't know if I'm too happy about that.
No. They're a good club to support. No, come on.
Do you think they're going to win the Prem? How close do you think it gets?
I really hope that we win the Premier League.
Because we're at 2 games left, right? I think there's 2 games
Yes, we
left.
are. Yep.
So
And we're taking it game by game. We're doing our job. That's just what it comes down to. It's been really cool supporting them though, just with how they progress over the past few seasons. So excited for whatever happens. Love watching them play, and that's ultimately what it's all about. So yeah.
I think by the time this is out, we'll know exactly what is enrolled in the last few weeks of the Premier League. The next one here, favorite quote or saying. Do you have something that you live by or you look back to?
Yeah. Do it for the plot. That, I mean, it speaks for itself, but it's just the concept that enjoy life. Why not do things to make life interesting? That is something that whenever I have to make a decision, I kind of tell myself that of like, hey, do it for the plot.
You've we mentioned you've been all over the US now. You've had positions all over. What are some top recommendations for like food spots or places you've been, cities you've enjoyed? Can you give us some insight into some of those?
Yeah. Let's see. In Austin, I'll give you some places for those. There's a really good farmers market in Mueller. I highly suggest checking that out and getting fresh lemonade. 10 out of 10. Also in Austin, one of my favorite things there, I still play soccer. And so one of my favorite things there was street soccer that I would play with a group at a place called Pan Am. So if you go, they are an incredible community that welcomes everyone. So show up ready to play in Austin, Texas.
I love it. Are you a big reader? Do you have a favorite book or one that you can recommend?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do. I love reading, and it's funny because as a student, I think that we read so much in school, and then I was just sick of it. But now that I've graduated, I have had a chance to kind of enjoy reading. And one of my favorite books is called The Energy Bus by John Gordon. That's a really, really great one that I suggest.
And you mentioned the balance of never falling out of love of football or soccer. And I think that's key, especially when you're working in the day-to-day environment. So in terms of other hobbies, do you have other hobbies to sort of break what you do in your day-to-day work?
Yeah. No, that's so important. And so when, not that I ever get sick of soccer, but when I need to do something else besides that, I love going for walks, getting outside and going for hikes, stuff like that, riding my bike, anything to just kind of get my body moving. And also, like I mentioned, farmers markets, love just kind of doing local things, checking out other like day trips from where I'm at, and just exploring what there is to explore.
And the last one here, if you could sit down, so we've changed the question. If you could sit down with one person for dinner, who would it be and why? But I want one like soccer related person and one just general in life.
Yeah. General in life, it has to be my family. Without a doubt, like I love them, and being away from them is never easy. So if they could just come over for dinner, I would never shy away from that. And then in terms of the soccer world, there's so many people, and I don't know if it'll ever happen. But I mean, I would love, of course, to sit down with Arteta just to kind of pick his brain as a soccer fan, or Odegaard. I love to hear kind of what players think of their managers as well. So I'd love to kind of hear his thoughts on what it's like to be, Arsenal and club captain and his experience.
Yeah, Odegaard I've always found fascinating with the fact that like he turned professional at 16. He was almost called a failure by 19 or 20. And then at Arsenal now he's captain and they're going on to potentially win the Premier League. They're playing Champions League. They're doing all these things. Like it's crazy to see the different trajectories of how the footballing world works. So that's definitely one that I'd be interested in.
Yes, I'm glad you agree with me on that one rather than my favorite team itself. So.
yeah, I can understand that at least. Do you have any last words before we wrap things up?
It's been an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to come on here and just kind of talk about my experience. yeah, for anyone that is looking to work in soccer, take the chance. It's awesome. I didn't know, that I would be where I'm at right now. Like we said, like 5 years ago, if you think back about it. And yes, it takes work, but I absolutely love what I do every single day, and I'm so grateful to do it. So if anyone's considering it, go for it. And then also check out Bay FC and what we're doing. Follow the club on social media. Come to a game. We love to make a great environment. And yeah, just watch more soccer, play more soccer, anything soccer, all about that. Yeah.
We'll have all the links below and everything like that. But Rachel, I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to speaking again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. No, I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you.